Everyone, it's Wednesday. You know what that means? It's Ouija Wednesday. I am Sapphire Sandalo, and this is Ouija Wednesday. This is a live stream that I do every Wednesday night, um, where I have a different friend come chat with me about something spooky. Sometimes it's like horror stuff, sometimes it's paranormal stuff, sometimes it's aliens, sometimes it's just like the state of the world, but it'll always be spooky. It'll always be a little bit weird. So thank you for joining me. I'm very excited for my guest tonight. I feel like every time we have done any sort of like podcast or chat, whatever, we can just shoot the shit about so much. So he is the host of the Let's Not Meet podcast. You know him, you love him. It's Andrew Tate.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going, Andrew?
Pretty good. Pretty excited.
Yay. Well, Halloween is around the corner, so I wanted to ask if you had any cool Halloween plans.
Yes, I'm going to be doing the live finale of Let's Not Meet, the one you're not able to make.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine. We did have to find a replacement. So everybody else is coming back besides you, and I promise I'm not trying to guilt you right now. But yeah, I did get a replacement. I'm excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun, though. Hopefully, you can just make the next one.
Yeah.
You're one of the most frequently requested returning guests, so it'll happen. We'll do it again.
Aww.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's this, I forget what they're called. I want to name drop them, but there's a podcast that reviews podcasts, and they recently did an episode about Let's Not Meet, and the one they reviewed was one you were on, and they were singing your praises about how well you did. I think it was the one that we did the interview at the end. I can't remember.
Well, the very first one then.
Yeah, it had to be. Yeah.
Oh, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while, but it's on Halloween at 7 p.m. same time. I'm going to be hosting on my Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/Let's Not Meet streams. So it's going to be a live episode of Let's Not Meet. I have Sora Narnia from Knife Point Horror. Shelby's coming back from Shelby Scott from what's her podcast? Scare You to Sleep. Yeah, I would just refer to her as Shelby's show. And then we have a new guest that I don't want to say who it is yet. It's a surprise. Pretty excited.
I know they are.
You probably do. Her podcast is really big. I was surprised because she reached out to me and she's like, "Hey, I want to be on your show." I was like, "Guess what?
That can happen.
I need somebody real bad." So yeah, that's my Halloween plans. And then my wife and I are gonna host a movie. Like hopefully Twitch doesn't kick us off. We'll see how it goes.
Good. How about you? I mean, hey, ask for forgiveness, not a permission.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
Well, the reason why I can't do the stream is because I'm going to be in Ventura. My cousins are putting on a costume contest with our dogs.
Okay.
So I will be away from a computer.
I'm going to be honest. A dog costume contest? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, that's worth skipping. Well, Let's Not Meet live show. I'll be honest. I'd do it.
Yeah, so I'm doing that, and then on Sunday I'm going to be going to the Queen Mary in Long Beach, doing a paranormal investigation for
cool.
Yeah, there's like a virtual event. If you guys want to buy tickets for it, they're still selling tickets. You can watch me and Rachel Evans from Snarled and Susan Slaughter from Paranormal Kind of Camera. We're gonna go on the ship and just like bop around looking for ghosts, I guess. Yeah, go to thedarkzone.tv if you're interested in learning more.
Send that to me so that I remember to do that. I want to check that out for sure.
I'm going to put, actually, here we go, thedarkzone.tv. And that's going to be on Sunday night.
Okay.
Yeah. Woohoo! Cool. Awesome.
I'm pretty disappointed about the field of view on our cameras because I set up my scene with this cool little lantern hanging up over here.
Oh no!
I had like a scene set up, but it does this
I think
split
I can,
screen.
It's
already done. I already took it all apart. It's too late.
Oh no!
It's too late.
So sorry.
It's okay.
Curse you, cameras. So when we were talking about what we were going to talk about tonight, you mentioned somebody that I'm already forgetting the name of, someone that you wanted to tell us about someone who's
Okay, so
wacky.
his name's Robert Monroe. I'll set it
Yeah.
up. So when you said, do you want to do Ouija Wednesdays? I was like, yeah, sure. I got nothing to talk about. We'll just shoot the shit like we do, which is fine. I like talking with you. But leading up to last night was kind of the pinnacle of like, oh my God, I got to talk about this. My dad texted me sometime last week or the week before when you had asked me to do it. And he said, hey, I know you're, because he comes to me with like health questions because I'm very much into health. I'm very active and I take a lot of vitamins. I try to eat right, all that crap.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to help me at all. He's like, hey, so I've been waking up in the middle of the night or trying to fall asleep. Sometimes when I try to fall asleep, it happens. I start getting these vibrations in my body and it scares me. And I feel like I can't move. And eventually it goes away. And I was like, Dad, you're fine. If you want to go to the doctor, that's fine. But I can tell you right now, based on my life experience and the research that I've done on it, you're probably having an out-of-body experience / sleep paralysis. And he had no idea what I was talking about. And I was like, listen, think back to when I was a child. I used to have what you called just bad dreams. You told me they were bad dreams. In truth, and I think I talked about this on your podcast. In truth, what was happening was I was having out-of-body experiences. I was on my ceiling and I couldn't get back to my body. It was freaking me out. It was like I was zooming in on the ceiling and then zooming back out. And then at some point I remember looking at my body and that scared the crap out of me. But I would wake up from these and, be crying and stuff. And, they would just tell me it was a bad dream. And I told them like, this has been happening to me. It happened to me throughout all my childhood. Eventually it stopped until recently I started having out-of-body experiences, but very mild ones. So I tried to explain it to him, this is what's happening. What it is when your body falls asleep and your consciousness is still awake and aware, it tries to separate from your body. And the start of a separation from your body is these vibrations that you feel. It's kind of sort of, you can call it a spirit, you can call it a soul, you can call it whatever you want. It's your consciousness trying to separate from your body. And I told him, like, just relax when that happens, because just let it happen. And there's a very good chance you could probably have an out-of-body experience and it'll be awesome and scary. It'll be great. He was like, okay, cool. Well, feel free to talk about it on that podcast thing. He doesn't really know what a podcast is. He still doesn't. He's like, how's the radio on the internet thing? So yeah, I explained that to him. I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk about this because I've had lifelong experiences with out-of-body experiences. I didn't know what they were growing up. It wasn't until, I got the internet and started researching it and learning more about it. And then finally YouTube came along and I was watching YouTube videos of people talking about it. And somebody referenced this guy named Robert Monroe. And so I looked him up. I ordered his first book called Journeys Out of Body. Didn't know anything about it, just knew it was about out-of-body experiences. Turns out this guy, while he was a radio broadcaster back in the 40s, 50s, he eventually turned into like the self-proclaimed out-of-body experience / astral projection expert. It's kind of crazy. Basically, he became like the pioneer of astral projection for the Western world. So, out-of-body experiences and astral projections have been something that's been popular in Eastern culture forever, but
indigenous people do it all the time.
Yeah, but exactly. But exactly. Even in America, before we came over here and ruined everything, people were having astral projection or out-of-body experiences. But he, in the 1950s, this wasn't anything anybody was talking about or writing about. And he really brought it to the forefront in America. And it's funny because he was 100% a skeptic. So he wasn't interested in any kind of religion or spirituality. And this was back in the 50s when this stuff was kind of taboo and weird. He was a pretty skeptical guy, which makes his stories even more interesting because it was basically a lifelong science experiment to prove himself wrong. He didn't want to believe what was happening to him was happening to him. He wanted to blame it on some kind of health problem. So basically, he figured out that these out-of-body experiences, which he refers to as OBEs, just for short for his book, weren't Yeah, oops. They weren't just hallucinations. It really was his consciousness separating from his body. So throughout his life, he wrote a number of books about it. He did all kinds of research. He logged so much in his journals. Like every single time he woke up from these experiences, he has books and books and books of everything that happened. And throughout all of his books that he's written, tonight I'm just going to touch on a few stories that were super interesting to me and that I could relate to personally. But eventually he opened this place called the Monroe Institute. So it was kind of like the Professor Xavier's school for gifted astral travelers. Basically, you could go there. It's like space camp for adults that want to learn how to have out-of-body experiences. And he would use what we refer to as nowadays binaural beats, which you see all over the place now. It's which if you know, those that are watching or listening aren't familiar, it's two different waveforms that are going in your ears, two different like drones at different waveforms. And what it does is it kind of like mixes up the both sides of your brain to where you have this floating sensation if you listen to them long enough and you really meditate while you're listening. And before it became like a popular thing we could all just listen to on our phones with our earbuds, he created this and he called it HemiSync. And he was having people come to the Monroe Institute. He was saying, hey, put these big ass headphones on and we're going to play these droning sounds and we're going to get you out of your body. So he wrote a number of books about it. He journaled it all. And basically it all started, I believe it was, let me check my notes. It was 1958. Yeah. So he woke up from a nap. He had breakfast with his family, and he started feeling this throbbing pain in his upper abdomen. He didn't need to eat anything out of the ordinary. It was just like bacon and eggs. Nothing was out of the ordinary. It was just a regular morning. He couldn't figure out what was causing the pain, but it wasn't really enough for him to call the doctor. He just thought, you know, I'm just going to wait for this to go away. And after a few minutes, it just kind of went away. So he lays down for another nap. And you're going to find out throughout all these stories, he really likes to take naps. That's his thing. He likes his nap time.
He's a nap guy.
Maybe this is what triggers it because, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in the methods on how to induce an out-of-body experience. But napping is a really good way to do it. So he lays down and takes a nap, same day. After a few minutes, he begins to feel this vibrating sensation in his body. And it would start at his head and make its way down to his feet. Like it was like this ring going down his body. Excuse me. It freaked him out and he thought that he was having some kind of like epileptic seizure. He was terrified. It scared him enough to wake him up and finally call the doctor. He made an appointment. The doctor tells him there's nothing physically wrong with him. He just needed more sleep, exercise, better diet, etc. Robert knew it was a problem beyond physical health because he really experienced this. Like he wasn't dreaming. He was conscious. He felt like he was going nuts though. And he was too embarrassed to tell anyone about it. And it just kept happening to him. Every time he would lay down to take a nap or go to bed, he would start feeling all these vibrations. So one night he's taking one of his usual naps before he goes to bed.
A nap before sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because he naps like a toddler with, a Tylenol PM addiction. He starts feeling these vibrations again. And at first he gets a little freaked out, but then he finds out that he's able to move his hand around. He's not fully paralyzed like the first time. But it's not his physical hand. It's this creepy little astral hand that's poking out of his body. And so he says that he felt the wood of his floor with his little ghost hand. And he was able to pass like right through the wood. And like kind of like the movie Ghost. I don't know if you remember that. There's a scene where he goes through a door and you could see like the inside of the wood. It's really cool. So he feels around with the hand and he was able to touch and identify three things: a piece of wood in the shape of a triangle, a nail, and a little pool of water. Now, it's so weird that he describes these weird things because he never goes back to this in the book. He doesn't talk about pulling up the floorboards to find what's in there. Like he never confirms this, but for some reason this is really important to him. To me, this sounds like some weird kind of like ritualistic remnants, you know what I mean, under the house or something.
Right.
Who knows? So yeah, he's reaching down there with his little ghost hand. He feels all those things. And after the experience, he decides to see a psychiatrist because the doctor referred him to one because he kept coming back saying, hey, this is happening. And this, I was able to, put my hand through the floor. So he's told by the psychiatrist there's nothing wrong with him. The psychiatrist actually told him that he should explore the sensation more and experiment with it.
Okay.
He actually referenced yogis and mystics in the Far East. You know how they talked in the 1950s. The yogis and the mystics in the Far East. Wacky. So basically, they've been documented to leave their bodies anytime that they please, and that this experience interested him more than it concerned him. And this didn't necessarily interest Robert. It concerned Robert. And he didn't really have time to fuck around in the Himalayas. Trying to transform himself into some kind of Russell Brand character or spend his life searching for answers to the universe. But he was willing to push forward with the idea because it wasn't going away. There wasn't a night he didn't have these experiences.
I have a question. Not to like throw off
but
your
in
group.
any time, like I said, I have so much content that I probably won't get through all of the stories. Please interrupt me. It doesn't matter. I feel like I'm talking too much already.
No. You're talking all that you need to talk. Wow. Okay.
We're podcasters.
Clearly.
We talk.
So when you were describing these out-of-body experiences, it actually reminded me of somebody that I know who has dissociative personality disorder. And I'm wondering, is there any correlation between that? Because like when he described the moment when he knew that like this was a thing, it really felt like he was watching his life like a movie.
Okay, so I'm going to get to that. Actually, I can't answer that question right now. But you 100%, 100% referenced something that I'm totally going to touch on.
Okay,
so
put a pin erase in that. Forget it.
Just put a pin. Put a pin in it. That's good because you're on the right track. So he pushes forward with the idea. The next experience was basically the icing on the cake. It was the ultimate confirmation. Hold on, let me edit my notes. There we go. It was the ultimate confirmation that this wasn't some kind of undiscovered tumor in his brain causing these insane sensations. So one night, Robert, he found himself in one of these paralyzed spells, and he began to feel around with his hand again. He reaches down, and he feels the surface beneath him, and it's solid, just like when he felt the floor. So he feels around, and he's like, all right, I'm going to try this again. But he realizes while he's feeling around with his hand, it's not the wall. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like wood.
Okay.
He's laying on the ceiling. He's not up against the wall. He was looking down on his bed and his wife. And he thought, oh my God, somebody's in bed with my wife. He didn't realize that he was looking at himself. So he's freaking out, thinking he's having some kind of dream about his wife cheating on him. So he's terrified. So he inspects it a little bit further, and he realizes, and he's relieved, that it's actually himself in the bed. And so he swims back down through, I don't know, the atmosphere or whatever. And he
swims.
Yeah, he swims. That's the way you travel is like you're in water, apparently. And he reattaches to his physical body and wakes up. And this was like, this is the moment where he's like, okay, I've got to look into this further. So he was extremely embarrassed about this. Like, he didn't like talking about it. He felt isolated. He felt like something was wrong with him, and he was scared to tell anyone for fear of ridicule. And this was in the 50s, like I said. You'd probably lose your job or get thrown in a straitjacket for claiming to prance around outside of your body like a ghost with an uncontrollable sex drive, which I will get into.
What?
Yes. You apparently, when you leave your body, and I don't want to say I can confirm this because I don't want to sound problematic, but you're horny as fuck.
Really?
It's weird. Even in lucid dreaming, because lucid dreaming is connected to out of body experiences. A lot of people think that it's just a deeper realm that you go to, or a deeper dimension that you're able to access.
Can I say I have either incredibly vivid dreams every night or lucid dreams every night? And a
That's
lot of them are
awesome.
sexual.
Yeah, they no. Everybody admits this. Honestly, I have no problem admitting this. As soon as I realize I'm in a lucid dream, because I do get those from time to time, because you have dream characters and people in your dreams and stuff like that. Immediately, I'm like, I have to have sex with that person. I have to have sex with that person. Who am I going to have
Wait,
sex with next?
is there is there like a reason that people know why that is?
Well, Robert thinks that it is because fear and sexuality are two of the strongest feelings and emotions that we experience in life. Like, nothing can compare to a sexual experience. Also, nothing can compare to the fear that you feel when you're really scared, like life or death, fight or flight. So he experienced feelings of fear, and feelings of sexual arousal. Those were two of the most prominent feelings that he had. So he thinks that it's just the human condition adjusting to this new experience. Everything's heightened. Everything is really weird. So that's kind of his explanation on it.
Okay.
So on the down low, because he didn't want to tell anybody about this whole thing, it would lead him to discover what he called, and this is funny, he called it an underground of what we would refer to today as paranormal investigators or psychics, etc. Basically, people that have knowledge and experience or special abilities in the supernatural world or anything, etc., etc., etc. But he calls it the underground.
Okay.
Because back then they didn't have a lot of info on these types of things for the regular working man in the 1950s,
right?
Or any of the work or anything, any of the books or anything that we have or anything online. So he was relieved to find that they existed, and it really motivated him even further to explore the astral world. So he began to refer to his astral body as a second body for some reason. I think he really wanted to stay away from any type of what you would consider woo-woo type of spiritual or mystic tag. He wanted to approach it scientifically as possible. He wasn't religious. He didn't have any interest in that field. So he called it second body in the second state. Those are the suitable titles. So as I said, he was interested in proving that these weren't just vivid dreams or hallucinations. So he decides one night to leave his body and travel somewhere. So he decides to travel to his friend Dr. Bradford's home, and he wants to visit him in his bedroom.
Sounds familiar. What's Dr. Bradford's first name?
I don't know the first name. He only references the last name in the book. Okay. Unfortunately.
Continue.
No, it's okay. There's a lot of weird things that he doesn't go. It's a very loose-ended book. It's not very well written. He gets better as the books go on. You can tell you could tell he was very confused when he wrote this book.
I mean, as he would be. I can understand.
As anyone would be. So he wants to visit his friend Dr. Bradford and he wants to specifically go to his bedroom because he's been to his friend's house, but he's never been in the bedroom. So he figures, hey, if I can identify and describe this room accurately, then I can prove that I really left my body. Also, his friend was sick in bed and he hadn't left his bed in days. So he knew that he would be there and maybe he could contact him.
Mm-hmm.
So he slides out of his body and he finds himself floating down the street like something out of like a Miyazaki film, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would imagine, like anime ghosts, like floating over the street. Like, so he's just flying along the street. And on the way there, I don't know why this was important, but he spots some like figure. And for some reason, this stuck out to me. He spots some figure like sitting cross-legged on the lawn meditating. And he was like, okay, that's weird. He keeps going, whatever. And he just ignores it. And before he can make it to the house, he sees both Dr. Bradshaw and Dr. Bradshaw's wife walking down the street, and they're all dressed in black. They pass right by him without taking any notice. And for some reason, this next part is really unsettling to me. I don't know why. It just kind of gives me the creeps. But he says that Dr. Bradford finally did notice him as he passed, turns around, looks at Robert, smiles, and says, well, I see you don't need any help anymore. And he doesn't know how to explain this. It freaks him out. Like, he's like, wow, I can interact with this guy, but what does this mean? I see you don't need any help anymore. How does he know what's going on? How is he aware of me? And how does he know that I don't need help anymore. I figured this out. What's going on? He's trying to connect the dots and he can't figure out what this is. There's something that's very creepy about that to me. Just this person spinning around and seeing your ghost and being like, well, I see you don't need any help anymore. And he just continues on his way. I know. So this freaked him out, and it caused him to make some what I can only describe as like a cartoony shortcut back to his body. So the way he does it is he slams into the sidewalk, like he like flies into the sidewalk, and that somehow transports him back to his body. He doesn't know how he did it. He just felt the inclination to do it. That's just how it works. So he wakes up and he assumes that the whole ordeal was just a waste. After his friend was sick in bed, and after all his friend was sick in bed, and he didn't get to the bedroom, there's nothing he could prove. He just thought it was a waste. He wouldn't be out on a night like that with his wife, especially being sick. So he talked to his wife. His wife agreed with him. Hey, I understand you're having these out-of-body experiences. He doesn't really talk to his wife a lot, but she's like, it doesn't really make any sense. But he ends up talking to Dr. Bradford, and it turns out that his wife and he and his wife were on a walk that night, and they were walking in the same direction at the same exact time that Robert made his trip, because when he came back and woke up, he looked at the clock. But they have no recollection of it. Dr. Bradford doesn't remember turning around and looking at him, turning around and saying anything at him. And this is a weird thing that happens throughout the book. He has all these experiences and interacts with people that are awake while he's in his astral body, and they interact with him, or they at least acknowledge that he's there, but they don't remember anything. And
wait, so when he asked Dr. Bradford, did you remember seeing me? He said he could remember seeing him.
No, he said he didn't remember anything. None of it made sense to him. So he thought, hey, maybe it still is a dream. Maybe I made this up. Maybe it's a coincidence that they were walking down the street. But to me, honestly, it confirms that he wasn't hallucinating.
Right. What are the odds?
Exactly.
Well, what if it's like when he was astral projecting, what he was doing was he was able to see everybody's astral self, and maybe this astral self is
this is why I wanted to talk to you about this shit, because dude, you got it. You're jumping ahead, but that's okay.
Sorry.
No. Let's talk about it. Exactly. So you'll hear, and hopefully I can get through these stories. You'll hear throughout these stories how he interacts with these people, and there are some that can remember remnants of things. Basically, they can say, you know what? At that time when you said you were visiting me, I felt weird. I felt like somebody was watching me, or I had deja vu. A lot of people have deja vu when he visits them. Another thing is children seem to talk to him and interact with him more than adults do.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which for me is, it rings especially true because I had these mostly when I was a child. And I got to tell you, when I had these, I saw the weirdest things, like the weirdest creatures and things while I was out of my body. It's a whole different talk, but you're right. Yeah, it is like he's interfacing with their astral body, and somehow their bodies or their consciousness has these deep-rooted memories of those experiences. And it makes me think of like all those times when you do have deja vu, or you feel like somebody is watching you, or you just get that chill out of nowhere, and you're like, or there's a coincidence. You know what I mean? Like, and the coincidence thing is huge, because I was telling you earlier, I wanted to talk to you about what happened to me last night. So before we go any further, so I was going through all my notes because I've read this book like 5 times, and I was jotting down all the stories I wanted to talk about out of the book. And you're going to call me right now, scam likely? Okay. So while I was jotting these down, I was watching an episode of Darkwing Duck. I'm not sure if you're familiar or if any of the viewers are. Yeah, we're about the same age. So I was watching an episode of Darkwing Duck on Disney Plus. I usually put that on after I take my Feels CBD. Go to feels.com /meat, promo code meat for your discount. No, whenever my nightly thing is I like to take some CBD and I watch cartoons. But I'm watching an episode of Darkwing Duck, and it's a funny episode because I don't remember this, but it was called Twin Beaks, and it was a parody of Twin Peaks, and it was a very, very faithful parody of Twin Peaks. And while I'm reading through my notes, I type the words out of body experience. And the exact moment that I typed that, Launchpad McQuack, one of the characters from the show, said, maybe it was an out of body experience. At the exact moment I typed that. I'm not lying to you. It scared the shit out of me. Like, I felt like I was having an out of body experience when it happened.
Yeah.
Because it just like, when you get, those times when you get so scared and freaked out that you feel like you're beside yourself, that's why people say I was beside myself. You feel like you're like detached. I felt that. It was weird because when I typed those words, Launchpad McQuack, a cartoon from the early 90s says out of body experience while I'm typing it. Anyway, that's when I knew I was like, I got to talk about this shit. So moving forward, there were other documents throughout the book with different experiments that he did. There was one where he attempted to prove again and again and again and again that this is all real. In one other instance, specifically, he was spying on the dining room of an acquaintance's home. He was like, I'm floating around outside of my body. Let's go see what's going on at my friend's house. So he's in their dining room, and he saw the family gather around the table with what he assumed were giant playing cards. Like, they looked big, but they were like playing cards. They were all holding them and looking at them. They were passing them around. They were like white cards, I guess, that they were passing back and forth. When he told his friends about this remote viewing, they were actually pretty delighted. They weren't like freaked out. Honestly, I'd be pissed off if my friend told me, "Hey, I was watching you in your dining room the other day."
Invasion of privacy.
Exactly. While I was outside of my body. But they told Robert that on that day they had woken up lately. Are later than they normally do, and they decided that they would all sit at the table and pass around the mail to each other rather than just the man of the house, the dad, going and getting the mail and giving it to everyone. They all sat around the table and they were looking at the mail and they were passing it to each other. So what he saw was them passing mail around to each other, everybody getting letters and stuff. But he interpreted it as they were playing cards.
Right.
So what we're seeing, and this kind of ties back to him interfacing with other people's astral bodies, is everything is slightly different. He's somehow able to interface with people. They don't always remember it. Sometimes they do, which we'll get to. But he sees these things, and his brain interprets them a certain way. Everything's just slightly off. And that makes sense because when you think about having a lucid dream, you're conscious, you're in a dream, you're aware that you're dreaming, but everything is off. And that's why you realize that you're in a dream. There's always the trigger that, or the, what do they call them? There's a word for them. Reality check. There's like a reality check where something's off. You're like, wait, why is my old girlfriend here? I haven't seen her in a decade. That type of thing. Everything's just slightly off. Words don't make sense. Numbers don't make sense. Anyway, so it's kind of similar to that. They told him, hey, we were just passing off the mail. And this was super out of the ordinary for them. And they were excited about it. And this occurred exactly the time that Robert said he was peeping on them. In the privacy of their own home, which he does that a lot. Yeah, he does it a lot, and I don't approve of it. But I can't. I'm going to be honest. If I were able to do it as well as he does it, I would definitely be spying on everybody that I know. I mean, come on. I just wouldn't write about it or
don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of reminds me of this woman that I had on my podcast recently. For a profession, she's a psychiatrist and yoga therapist, so she's a legit doctor, but she's also a psychic medium, like unofficially. She just is very intuitive and knows things. And after I interviewed her, we were just talking a little bit more about how that works, and she was telling me all these things that she predicted about her daughter that came true. And there was God, what did she say? She said something about how or it came up, I don't know how it came out, but she basically was like, sometimes, I worry about her, but I have to stop myself from, trying to basically like enter her brain, like because
Yeah.
I have to like respect her privacy and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, it's just because I know I don't think my mom would. She'd be all up in there being like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I don't know. I
Oh my
mean,
God. Yeah.
Robert,
Yeah.
is his name
100%.
Robert Monroe?
Yeah. Robert Monroe.
Robert Monroe did not have yeah, that sense of
He didn't have any tact.
yes, exactly.
No respect.
Right.
But
Interesting.
yeah, so but the next one, he has a little bit too much respect. So the
Okay.
next experience he has, or at least the next most notable from the book, there's so many. I recommend anybody that's interested in this stuff, go get it. Also, you can get the audiobook. It's on Audible. It's awesome.
What's it called?
It's called Journeys Out of Body. And there's
Right
3
on.
books. It's like the Journeys trilogy. There's like Further
Robert.
Journeys and then something else. I don't know. But they all just document more and more experiences that he has. And man, it's fucking wild. But basically, the next one is where one of Robert's friends asked him to join a seance because of what his friend referred to that he was having were spiritual experiences. He
Okay.
gave them an apprehensive maybe and purposefully or maybe conveniently forgot to go because, like I said, he wasn't into that stuff. He just wanted to experiment on his own.
Uh-huh.
He really just wanted to prove himself wrong. So he opts to go to bed early that night. But he's woken up by the sensation of the vibrations and stuff. What he described it this way, though, was weird. He said it felt like, and this is just the phrase that he used, walking over your grave coldness that caused the hairs on the back of his neck to rise. That's what he called it. So it was more of a spooky sensation that woke him up. So he looks across the room and he realizes, I'm out of body. This isn't my real body because things don't really look right. And he sees a ghost. It's a ghost-like figure that's standing in the doorway of the bedroom, and this resembles a traditional ghost. And it's in its appearance, it's the white flowing sheet draped over the head to the ground, and it's just standing in his doorway looking at him. So he reaches out, and he's trying to make contact with it. He can't make contact with it. It reaches out and placed its hand over the door frame above him. So the ghost reaches up, puts its little sheet hand on the door frame. I don't know why this detail is important, but all of these details for some reason are very unsettling to me, so I wanted to include them all. He said that the door frame was about 6 foot tall, but the ghost grew to even taller, and he was towering over the room. Robert was basically overcome with fear, dread. He cringed at the sight of the ghost. But then he felt 2 hands firmly clasp around his face and cover his eyes, like he wasn't supposed to be looking at the ghost. He tried to pull them away, but it was really difficult. He wasn't able to do it. After some time of struggling, he finally did get the hands away, and this menacing ghost-like creature was right beside his bed. And then he was suddenly lifted up by 2 arms on each side of his body. Like he was, like, imagine 2 people beside you lifting you up from the ground, but they were lifting him up away from his body. He didn't have any fear at this point. It all just kind of left him. And this presence, it took a hold of him, and it felt friendly. He says they were definitely like 2 different beings on either side of him. So he opens his eyes and he finds out that they're hovering over a room occupied by 4 different women around a table. He looked to his sides, and he sees that the beings are both male that are holding him. One is blonde, one is dark-haired, resembling Asian features, as he described it.
Okay.
They both smiled at him, and they floated him down, and he sat in an empty chair in the room with the women around the table. Across from him was a large woman in all black, and he says on one side of him was a woman in a robe, and then there were 2 other women that were indistinct, like he couldn't really make out their features. Suddenly, the woman in black got up and then walks over to him and drapes herself on top of him. Then all of them begin to laugh. A man appears in the doorway and says something along the lines of, "I think he's had enough." And it's so weird. They always make these statements or say these things that vaguely relate to the experience that he's having, but they're always so vague. It's like, what do you mean
Right.
by that? I
Enough of
think he's had
what?
enough. Enough of what? Exactly. So he's then transported back to his body where he wakes up, and his wife was really
Sorry, sorry, sorry. I turned on my fan.
Is
and
Robert
then
Monroe there right now?
No! Robert, you better get out of here.
Spying on you?
Stop spying. Sorry, my fan fell over. Go on.
I like the comment, his little sheet hand. Hey, Ravenlocks. Little sheet hand. So
Sorry,
a little
continue.
creepy ghost hand. So she says, his wife says that he stopped breathing. And
she was watching him while he was sleeping?
Yeah, well, she was trying to wake him up. He was whimpering, but he stopped breathing completely. And finally, she got him to wake up. There was nothing else out of the ordinary that occurred aside from the fact that the cat in the bedroom had grown noticeably frightened by something. They don't know what it was, but the cat was scared to death, ran out of the room. So he tells his friend that asked him to do the seance about what happened that night. She describes the scene almost exactly as he viewed it during his out-of-body experience. There were women sitting around a table. His friend was all in dark clothing. The other was in a robe, but the rest of the women he didn't know. So there weren't any distinguishable characteristics about them that he remembers because he just didn't know who they were. So that also adds to the idea that there's this weird memory, there's this weird connection that you have with other people's astral bodies that you know personally. Other people just appear to be random people, just characters. So they weren't distinguishable. She said that at one point during the session, she got up and sat in an empty chair and made a joke about how she was sitting in Robert's chair, and everyone laughed. Basically, it made everyone giggle. And everything played out almost exactly like Robert's experience. He couldn't understand why she came over and, he said, draped herself over him. But in reality, she walks over, sits in the chair that he was sitting in, and makes a joke about him not being there and that she's Robert, like mimicked Robert, and everybody laughed about it. And he remembers everybody laughing when she draped herself over him. But then there was the random person that walked in and said,
he's had enough.
What did he say? Yeah, he's had enough. So this was a really convincing story. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I like this story specifically because it references the sheet ghost, which is one of my worst fears. There's something about sheet ghosts that's scary to me.
So, okay. Does that mean that enough, like the stereotypical sheet ghost has actually been seen before, and that's why it's a cliche?
I think that everything exists. And I know
yes.
I know we wanted you. I know because the one time we really talked about any weird stuff, we talked about simulation theory, which is not even something I'm that into. It's just something that I was toying with at the time. But really, what I believe is everything that could happen is happening in every single dimension. And when we have these stories of people seeing ghosts, seeing werewolves, seeing vampires, all these things, they are things from other dimensions that we don't normally see because some people are more sensitive to them, some people aren't. I'm sure you're familiar with this kind of stuff. I think that they exist in different realms, like different astral realms. And Robert is one of those people who found himself being able to explore all these places. He does actually go to a place. No, go ahead.
The idea that, excuse me, burped.
I know, I keep burping. I keep going like, oh, excuse me.
Oh my God, no, we're filled with ghosts. So I always have this thought, and I'm pretty sure people have had this too, is that like, okay, so what you were saying about how everything is real because it exists in some sort of dimension. Like, what if that's what imagination is that we're tapping into those other dimensions where these things are real, or we're creating them in those dimensions? Either way, but it's like even if we make them up in our mind, it in a way is real.
Well, one thing he goes on to talk about later is that when you leave your body, everything's replicated. Your clothes, your features, your facial hair, your eyes, all of it is exactly the same. He's looked at himself in a mirror and it's all the same. But he figured out that he's able to morph into things. He's basically like
Whoa.
Nickelodeon gack. Like he can just basically
What?
like liquid. And he was able to form into other people and other things in these. But this is way down the line. This is like maybe book 3. I don't know. I can't remember because it's been so long since I read the other ones. I've just read the first one a million times. But yeah, I think that either we're seeing other people in astral projection or in the astral realm and they're morphing, or we're actually seeing things from other realms, because he goes on to say that he was able to find a portal, and I think it was a vacation home that they were at.
Okay.
He didn't really he only ever did these experiments in his home. He never tried them outside of his home until far later in his experiences. But there is one where he was able to find a portal in the wall at this place that I think it was a vacation home, or they were watching somebody's house, like house sitting. It's a black portal in the wall. He reaches in and a hand grabs his hand and pulls him into it. It's complete blackness. He doesn't know what's going on. But eventually he continues to sort of fly through this astral world, and he ends up in what he calls locale 2. What we're in is locale 1, and he's able to explore the real world, like go to different friends' houses and things like that. He goes to locale 2, what he calls it. It's a different dimension, and he sees what's like Earth. There's people there. They're driving around, and they have trains and stuff, but everything is run on steam. Cars run on steam. Trains still run on some kind of steam. Nothing's electric, and nothing is runs on gas. It's a weird, whole different world where everything's a little different, but it all runs on this weird steam energy.
Is that like retro or futuristic?
I don't know, steampunk, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe that's where it comes from. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a whole, it seems like its whole own little world, this whole steampunk thing. Maybe this comes from a different dimension. So he's in this weird locale 2, and he keeps going back to it, and he likes it. He's like, this is weird. This is like life. He actually wakes up one time inside somebody's body. He possesses somebody in this world. In locale 2. He's a guy that has a regular job. He meets a girl. He marries the girl. And all throughout the life of this person, he's popping in and out and experiencing it through him. But when he's in the body of this person, he's taking over. But the person has no memory of it. It's like the person kind of blanks out for a minute. Whoa. So he's popping in and out of this guy's body. And he notices while he's doing this and experiencing this guy's life, his wife notices. His wife says, "Whose wife? What's wrong with you?"
Monroe's wife or the other guy's wife?
No. The guy's wife that he's inside of. The guy's wife starts suspecting it. She's like, starts questioning him, asking him weird questions, and he doesn't have the answers to the questions because he's Robert Monroe. What he really did, and this pisses me off. What he did is he ruined this guy's life by being curious and possessing him and experiencing everything through him. Somebody said John Malkovich.
Unethical.
100% John Malkovich. That's what that movie's about. His wife, the person's wife that he's inhabiting, starts to suspect something's wrong. Their marriage goes bad. There's one day where he possesses the guy and he realizes, oh my God, this guy's driving. I'm in his body and he's driving this steam vehicle, and I don't know how to function this thing because everything's wrong. Nothing works like a regular car.
Oh no.
He looks over at his wife, and his wife says something along the lines of like, "Are you you?"
Oh my God.
And he doesn't know how to answer. He crashes the car. Everybody survives. Everything's fine. But eventually the guy's wife leaves him. The guy goes into a depression. Every time he goes back to this guy's life, he sees that the guy's depressed. He misses his wife. Eventually the guy's life does get better. He gets a better job. And Robert, I guess, loses interest because he stops going back. But this really pissed me off because I see this as what you were talking about earlier, and that there are people that have multiple personality disorders, maybe people that have other kind of mental disorders that we can't really explain other than the fact that we treat them with medication and therapy. But there really is no explanation as to why people have these different disorders and these different experiences. this is way out there, but it could be that people that are having these experiences are being affected by beings from other astral realms. Beings from different planes are possessing them or fucking up their lives. You know what I mean? If you ever, I've known people in the past that weren't necessarily stable. People that I just didn't feel safe around. You know, you just meet somebody at a show or something, and you're like, oh yeah, that's nice. Okay, I'm gonna take off.
Yeah.
And you think like, oh wow, this person was a little weird, but then then they seem totally normal, and they have friends, they have a normal life, everything's normal. I don't know. I think that there's so much beyond our own dimension affecting our dimension that we don't understand, and we probably never will. But
I mean, here's my theory, is that I think we do kind of understand. Like I I think that we do have the answers, but they're too bonkers for anyone to accept as the truth.
yeah.
But I'm oh God, excuse me. Where was I going with this? I don't know. I think that because I always think about how there's 2 trillion known other galaxies in the universe. Just like knowing like how much of a tiny part we are of everything. I'm like, there's no way that what's happening in those galaxies is not affecting us. I mean, it always bothers me when people say, well, here's maybe where I lose people, but let me explain. Because, okay, obviously when people think of astrology, the first thing they go to is like the horoscopes you see in the newspaper, right? That's all bullshit. That's made up by like a girl at a computer, right? That's not what astrology is. But the idea that planets do affect us, it absolutely is 100% real, because even just on the most basic of levels, we wake up when the sun is out. We go to sleep when the moon is out.
The moon
How can
controls
you say,
like the ocean or the wind or whatever? What the fuck?
Women are like our menstrual cycle is synced with the freaking moon. So it's like,
are you kidding me?
Right. And so it always bothers me when people say, oh, like what happens out there doesn't affect me. It's like, it is though. There already are things that we know scientifically affect us. So it's like, what else?
Yes.
Is
so exactly. Yeah. And that's why I love this book, because he doesn't know that he's touching on these things. He doesn't know, because this is in the 50s. He's not thinking about these things. He didn't have the internet. People weren't talking about these things.
He just has the experience.
Yeah. And we can now relate these things. And this book is amazing. Please check it out. I really quickly, because I know we got to wrap it up, I want to go through this. I'm going to zoom through a couple, just like one more story.
Yes.
So this one is really important to me. Robert was staying at a relative's house. His niece was in the room just next to him. He was laying on his bed and he felt the vibrations. He got up out of his body and he saw 3 beings in his room with him.
No.
He said that they felt sinister and negative. He found that he was being held back and unable to get back to his body for some reason. He realized that it was these beings started holding him down and holding him back with some kind of force. So he starts reciting every prayer that he knows. He pleaded to God, even though he wasn't religious, to get back into his own body. The 3 beings continued mocking him and laughing at him and saying things like, look at him praying to his gods and things like that. And they kept pulling him back and holding him down. Robert got pissed off enough, and he was able to summon up enough strength to break loose and get back into his body. This was terrifying to him. He'd never had any type of experience like this. He wakes up and his niece is crying in the other room. So this went on for some time, and he was like, I got to check on her. So he gets up and he goes in there. Her mom was in the room holding her, his sister. And the girl was bawling, and Robert asks if he could help. But the mother said that she had been crying like this and she couldn't stop her, but that she was still asleep and she couldn't get her to wake up. And she just kept crying in her sleep the whole time. Finally, she did wake up and everything was fine. But the fact that this happened outside of Robert's house when he's staying at a family's house, and, you know, his niece has his experience crying in her sleep, having sleep paralysis that she's never had, and you know, correlation with the experience he had with these three dark beings. That is something that touches on the idea of hauntings. Like,
Yeah.
he never experienced something like this until he was in somebody else's house. Maybe he was able to view these ghosts or astral beings or whatever that are haunting this house, and that little girl knows what's going on there, and this somehow affected her, and she went into this sleep paralysis where she was crying. And it's really sad, but it's also very like polarizing as to like, we don't understand hauntings. Maybe we just don't understand it. Maybe it does have to do with different dimensions, different astral realms that you can only some people are able to access. And children, for some reason, are more sensitive to it. Over and over again. Like, there's one instance where he visits this random family when he's floating around. He goes into a room, a little girl sitting on the floor playing with toys. She looks up at him and she goes, "I know what you are."
No.
And he looks down at her and he just stares, and she goes, "You're a ghost." And then he looks over to his left, and the parents are sitting on the bed, and they look up at him, but they don't really know what he is. He gets the sense that they're scared and they're uneasy. Yes, they see him, but they're uneasy because it's new to them. They're like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah.
He just leaves. He doesn't know. He doesn't like the whole situation. He just leaves. But that sort of has this weird explanation as to why kids, not necessarily why, but sort of confirmation that kids are more sensitive to it than adults, why they get so scared of it, and why we're so against, why there's so many adults that are against the idea of ghosts. They're like, yeah, that's nonsense. It's simply because we are scared of it. They're terrified of that. And when they do experience it, it's their astral body that they're not connected with anymore because they're not a child. They're not sensitive anymore. You know, their adulthood has taken over. It's convinced them this is all fake. And when their astral body, which does exist, they're just not in tune with it, experiences those things, they don't know what to do. He said that they were just there in shock of what was going on. He takes off, and he doesn't know who they are. There's another one where he floats around and he lands on somebody's roof, and he's sitting on the roof and he looks down at a woman. She's doing her laundry. It's an adult woman. Same exact thing happens. She looks up at him, recognizes him, but doesn't say anything. She's just scared and shocked and stands still. And he kind of flies off because he's like, I don't want any part of this. This is weird. He doesn't want to scare people.
He is haunting people.
I know. That's the thing. He doesn't know that he's haunting people. He doesn't know.
God,
yeah,
Robert,
and he just takes off.
Get your act together.
Exactly. He just takes off. One last thing before we go. I know we got to wrap it up, but these are kind of dark and weird experiences, and there's more that I had that I can't get to. I thought I would have more time, but
you'll just have to come back again.
Yeah. Let's do another one, but we'll do it on book 2. But just to close things off, I do want to go over one more dark little thing about it and then end on a positive note. The Black Sea. He was able to access this realm that he calls the Black Sea. He was able to fly over it on his way to Locale 2, where he was possessing this guy's body that I talked about earlier. But he had to travel over this Black Sea. He would look down and he would see water that was all black, but he would see people drowning in it and begging for him to come help them, like it was hell, like it was some dark, fiery sea. He didn't know what it was. He couldn't explain it, but I looked this up. I looked research into it, and it's kind of has parallels with the lake of fire that they talk about, like in the Christian Bible, like King James type Bible thing. I don't know anything else about it other than that. But there's this one last experience where he's trying to get to that locale too, and he ends up in this place that it's no particular place. He just ends up in this gray area. There's a woman, and he realizes he's in a church, and she wants to help him. He senses this weird sexual feeling from her. He holds back at first, but then he implies that they did have intercourse, and he describes it as a spark. It's not sex. It's like they attach and they connect to each other, and it sparks.
Like Avatar.
Yes, exactly. It's like a spark. Yeah, exactly. Again, another thing that's parallel. Mm-hmm. They connect, they spark, and he thanks her, and he realizes there's a man that's watching him. He looks at the man. The man has a strong voice, and with sarcasm in his voice, he says, well, and it's another one of these things. He says, well, now you're ready to learn the secrets of the universe. But he says it in a sarcastic way.
What is that?
He says, my name's Albert Mather. I hope you're ready because nobody took the time to tell me when I was back there. has no
What?
idea what this means. There's no explanation, but it seems like this person may be dead. He's a ghost. And he's like, when I was in your place, nobody explained to me what was going on. I don't know. That's what I gather from it. But I looked up Albert Mather, and there was no really historical significance or anything. But anyway, just to cap it off, some tips if you guys want to get out of your body. The vibrations are the first sign that you're going to have an out-of-body experience. Really, a way to induce it is wake up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom, walk around a little bit, then go back to bed. But when you go back to bed, imagine yourself somewhere. Just imagine yourself somewhere else than your body. This is called wild. It's called waking-induced lucid dreaming, but it's also a way to induce out-of-body experiences. You are fully awake, but you're going back to bed. And what's happening is, because you were asleep previously, when you go back to bed, it's putting you in that, I don't know if it's the alpha state, it's or delta, I don't know. There's a bunch of different names for the different levels of sleep. It puts you back in that deep place that you normally takes forever to get to. Beta, yeah, beta. I think that's what it is. It puts you in that beta level that normally deep sleep is. It takes you a while to get to. You'll get to that immediately. But if you're conscious when you're doing it and you're imagining yourself somewhere, you can transport yourself anywhere.
Okay.
And I've done this a million times. This is the best way to either lucid dream or out-of-body experience. I think they're the same thing, even though people say they're not related. I think lucid dreaming is just out-of-body experiences, but it's just more intense because you're fully asleep. But I've imagined myself like at Disneyland. And I know it's stupid, but I'm you know me, I'm the Disney guy. I wake up and I'm at Disneyland and I'm literally there. I'm walking around and there's people there. And I'm having an out-of-body experience. And if you're interested in doing it, the best way to do it is the wild technique. Wake up, go back to bed, and imagine yourself somewhere, and don't stop thinking about it. Just let your body go back to sleep, and there's a good chance that you will transport to that location. It could be anywhere in the world. It's really cool. I don't know. I have so much more stuff to go over. So let's do another Ouija Wednesday.
Yes. Oh my God,
so
Andrew, this was amazing. Probably one of my favorite Ouija Wednesdays. This was so much fun. I know. I'm so sorry. If any other night, I'd be like, let's just keep going. But like, I do gotta go.
Oh no, I know. You got stuff to do. You're a busy woman. You do it. You do your thing.
Before we go, I want to. Oops. There you go. This is your Instagram and Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so follow Andrew if you aren't already. Listen to the Let's Not Meet podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
And
is there anything else you want to plug?
No, just want to put pressure on you that we need to do part 2 because I have more stories and I want to talk more about out-of-body experiences and also how to do it. I want to give you guys more instructions. I have all kinds of stuff to go over. And also everybody in the chat, I wish I could have responded to everything, but I felt like I just had so much shit to talk about. I apologize.
No, it's all good. Part 2 coming up. We'll figure it out when.
Yes. Thanks so much, Sapphire.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.